Today, we're looking at Diamine's Majestic Purple. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, Diamine's Majestic Purple is a purple ink. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I use the ink in a different pen for a day. I then put it into a cross Bailey with a medium nib to take my notes for this video. Now, before we get to the writing samples, let's look at the sciencey bits. Up first is a chromatography, and I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it in the water for 10 to 15 seconds. And what we see is a true purple dye. This is not a mixture to make the purple, but it starts very light. There is a slight line that looks like it might have a little bit of hold on. It pushes way up. We see some of the white of the paper, and then it becomes that very dark, rich purple. The one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. It looks exactly the same. So when I'm looking at this, I'm really expecting letting it dry do nothing to affect this ink. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean from your pens. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, it handles it pretty well. There is some spread. It goes from an extra fine to just under being a medium. It doesn't blow up and become unreadable, which to me keeps it safe in a note-taking situation. Water reactivates and lifts this ink completely off the paper. Now, it's not a blank circle, but we do see the white of the paper coming through, making me say that water is all that should be needed to clean this from your pens. Pen Flush did everything that water did and a little bit more. There's more white of the paper coming through, but water was enough to get this all out. Bleach, as would be expected, completely removes it from the paper. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with a realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Diamine's Majestic Purple has a viscosity of 2.32, making it normal. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done with the extra fine and medium nib on Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rodya paper. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with a realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Diamine's Majestic Purple has an average dry time of 8 seconds, making this a super fast drying ink. Now, let's look at the writing samples. I picked this ink up in sample form, and to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at Clairefontaine. We get no bleeding and no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen. It does offer little bits of shading. The LE in purple is a little darker than the P, and the PU is a little darker than the R. In the Diamine, I came out a little bit lighter than the rest of Diamine. Majestic shows some nice shading within it. Not in great degree, in very small degrees. So the J is just a tone or two lighter than the A or the E. It does offer a little bit of shading, nothing tremendous, but it is there. The extra fine is a noticeably lighter tone than we got with the 1.1. The extra fine has no feather, spread, halo, sheen. It does, again, offer little bits of shading. The Q and the K are a little bit darker than the rest of Quick. The R to O is darker than the rest of Brown. Fox starts dark, gets a little bit lighter, and then gets a little bit darker again. So it does offer little bits of shading, and it dried super fast at only 2 seconds. The medium was a slightly darker tone than the extra fine. It had no feather, spread, halo sheen. The shading came through better with the medium than it did with the extra fine. In Quick, it starts as that medium tone and gets to a darker tone at the K. Brown is a solid medium tone. Fox is a medium tone to dark tone on the X. Jump starts light and gets dark again. Lazy has light spots and dark spots within it. Lazy is the nicest shading word that's up here. It took 6 seconds to dry. The extra fine and the medium scrubby both showed us color variation. We did get some color variation with both, and the smear test says you could likely recover it if you smeared while you were writing. So, Tomoe River. Tomoe River gives us no bleeding. Of course we get ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shade. Looks dull here. The extra fine, noticeably lighter tone. It's about, 2 or 3 tones lighter than the 1.1. It had no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade, and 7 seconds to dry, which on Tomoe River is pretty quick. The medium is a darker tone, not quite as dark as we got with the 1.1, but definitely darker than the extra fine. It had no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shading, 17 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us a little bit of color variation, but we didn't get any of it at all up there. It does show some, but it's just that it's a darker color, and being as dark as it is, sometimes the shading can be harder to see. The smear test, interestingly, I believe you could recover this if you smeared it while you were writing. Rodya. Rodya gives us no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1, no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shading in the 1.1. I think that's just because it's like squeegeeing it as it moves. The extra fine is a noticeably lighter tone. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen. It has spots of shading, just spots of shading. The P looks a little bit darker than the rest of Jumps. The dot on the top of the J is darker. The X in Fox is darker than the rest of the word. The B in Brown is darker than the rest of the word. So there are spots of it, just little spots. 5 seconds to dry. The medium is a noticeably darker tone and not as dark as the 1.1. The medium had no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and absolutely no shading at all in this writing. It took 10 seconds to dry. Now when we look at the scrubby, the extra fine shows us some color variation. It shows us more than we got in the writing, but we did get some. The medium shows us none, we got none. And the smear test says you could likely recover it if you smeared. What happens on yellow paper? Yellow Rodya, we have no bleeding and no ghosting, which is expected. So the thing that's very interesting here is it's a dull purple to me on white paper. On a yellow Rodya, it looks like it's got much more life to it. It's a nicer purple to me. The tone of it is, it's not just a tone difference, it's a shading difference entirely. It's an entirely different purple, which I prefer it on yellow. Same happens with the extra fine. It's a different purple, and I think it looks much nicer. Same with the medium. It's really obvious when we look at the scrubby difference. Let's see if I can get the camera to get in on that. An entirely different tone. There we go. Or a different shade of purple. I really prefer the yellow over the white one on that, but individual tastes may vary. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. That's it. None. The extra fine is a noticeably lighter tone with no feather, spread, halo, sheen. It does offer spots of shading. It actually offers more spots of shading than we got with the white paper. The is an entirely different tone of purple than over. Quick starts light and gets dark. Jumps starts light, gets dark at the P, and then gets lighter again onto the S. Much nicer here. 5 seconds to dry. The medium, a noticeably darker tone. I think it's as dark a tone as I see with the 1.1. The medium has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shading, just like the white paper. 9 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both. The extra fine shows us some color variation when you look far left to far right. We did get much more here than we did on the white. The medium shows us no color variation. We got none. And the smear test, you could likely recover it. So this is Fabriano Echo Qua. Now, this gave us no bleeding and no ghosting. Yes, it starts to come through a little bit when you scratch it in stupid thick like I do on the scrubbies. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shading. None. Like I said, it's a dull color to me. On white paper, it's dull. The extra fine
Same tone as the 1.1. Same exact tone, no feather, spread, no halo, no sheen, no shading, 4 seconds to dry. The medium is the exact same tone that we got with the extra fine. It had no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. It took 7 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both showed us no color variation. We didn't get any color variation. And the smear test, you could likely recover it. So I looked at the Leuchtturm 1917 notebook. It got no bleeding and no ghosting. The 1.1 had no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. I really don't like this purple. What this ink does on this paper. Me, I would avoid this just entirely with that. The extra fine has a slightly lighter tone than the 1.1. The extra fine offers no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shade. It took 6 seconds to dry. The medium is a darker tone. Back to what we saw with the 1.1, the medium offered no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. It took 9 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both showed us no color variation. We didn't expect it, we didn't get it, and the smear test says you could likely recover it. And that is all that I have for the writing sample.
Instead of finding inks that look like Diamine's Majestic Purple, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I've chosen Krishna's Bauhimia because it's a very nice pink to magenta tone with this purple. Before I give my opinion on this ink, I would ask, if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. So what do I think of Diamine's Majestic Purple? I think the color of the ink is absolutely amazing. But for some reason, when I write with it, I feel let down. I don't know why. There's something missing when I write with this ink. Again, the tone is very nice, but just something's missing for me. But if you like purple inks, you should check this one out. Thanks for watching.